All right, let's talk New Orleans Saints. Certainly one of the more interesting teams to cover this offseason. They've been linked to a lot of big moves. They've already made a few of them. It's definitely a time of change for the New Orleans Saints as they look to finally get back to winning after a number of disappointing seasons. And it looks like the Saints are making a really smart move involving the most important position on the field, of course, the quarterback position. It's kind of sliding under the radar, but it's a great strategy by the Saints leadership. We'll get into that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the biggest question mark for the New Orleans Saints is the future of the quarterback position. And we know Derek Carr is still there. He probably will be the starter day one unless things really change. As disappointing as that may seem to some Saints fans, there have been some rumors and a lot of well-founded reports that the Saints are potentially going after a quarterback in this upcoming draft. And there's a good chance that they do accomplish that goal, again, trying to draft a quarterback, whether it's in the first round or later rounds. We'll have to wait and see if and when that comes. But there's been a new report that's come out about the Saints making a smart move with a young, talented gunslinger already on the roster. Let's pull up this report courtesy of Athlon Sports, then we'll talk about it on the other side. Kellen Moore emphasized the importance of a quarterback's second offseason in their development. Moore believes this offseason could be a huge jump for Spencer Rattler as he continues his growth as an NFL quarterback. That second offseason for a lot of guys is a huge jump, said Moore. That first season, you're just swimming. That is true for any player. For Rattler, who was thrust into action early in his rookie season, this statement rings true. Moore referred to Rattler as a good player with a ton of tools and noted that he evaluated Rattler during the previous year's draft cycle with the Philadelphia Eagles. Moore further discussed Rattler citing this challenging circumstance he faced throughout his rookie season and calling it important context in their continued evaluation process of Spencer Rattler. Now let's talk about these challenging circumstances. Go and pull up the second graphic right here. Here were some of the injuries in terms of the people around Spencer Rattler, offensive linemen, receivers, running backs. And this is not everybody. This is just like the top line, according to Perplexity AI, my favorite AI to use. They don't sponsor us or anything. I just recommend them as a good AI. You can see the offensive lineman at the top. I really think Eric McCoy was a big miss. We know Olave and Rashid Shaheed. I mean, come on, your top two receivers, great playmaker. And then running backs, I mean, Miller was just an injury concern all season. And of course, Kamara missing a lot of time as well. So this is what Kellen Moore is saying, and it's a really smart approach by him. He's not throwing out Spencer Rattler. He's not dismissing him out and saying, he's done, right? He's looking at what he did in 2024, and there was some good, right? You look at, for example, that one Buccaneers game, at least for 3 quarters, he did a lot of good things. I think showed a lot of fight, a lot of grit, despite being surrounded by a second and third string core around him. And I think that's what Kellen Moore is alluding to. What he saw last year from Spencer Rattler is a guy who has the physical tools and has the grit. His team was just terrible due to the injuries. That's not a fair evaluation. I think the Saints are taking a smart approach. I think they're looking at Spencer Rattler as the guy to potentially succeed Derek Carr. I don't think that ship has completely sailed. That doesn't mean they don't draft a quarterback in this year's draft, but the more I think about it, I look at the situation and maybe what the Saints can have to give up. Maybe they don't trade up. Maybe they don't go quarterback in round 1. Maybe they wait till round 2, 3, maybe get a Jackson Dart or something like that and let Spencer Rattler and Dart compete it out to be number 2 and then number 1 eventually. I think that would be the smart approach to take. And based on Kellen Moore's comments, it looks like that's what the Saints are trying to do. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but who dat? In the comment section below, give us your thoughts on the Saints quarterback situation. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to draft a quarterback? If so, who? Do you want them to keep working on Spencer Rattler? Do you think he's a long-term guy? Or at this point, you're just like, heck, let's just ride with Derek Carr. Let's see where this train wreck ends up taking us. Maybe it ends up working out. Who knows? Give us your thoughts and what you want the Saints to do involving the quarterback position in the comment section below. But Mize, enough from me. Over to you. What are your thoughts on the Saints?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is definitely true because you already see when the injuries started to roll downhill for the Saints. This is a team that got off to everybody remembers those first 2 games of the seasons because that was the year the Saints were going to win the Super Bowl. Derek Carr was going to be the MVP. Maybe Alvin Kamara is going to be MVP. Like, this was a team that was on fire. Nobody could beat this team. Then a couple injuries happen, and all of a sudden this team just falls off of a cliff, and we don't really hear much about them anymore for the rest of the season. And if that happens to the starters on this team, you can only imagine how difficult it is for a guy like Spencer Rattler to move into this situation and be like, all right, I'm going to try to drive this ship, but the rudder's broken. We have a slice in our sail. Like, there's not a crew. I'm doing it all by myself. I think that's a key point to hear. And the fact that Kellen Moore is like, hey, I actually understand that. I'm going to, take into account that, look, this is a team that you really can't judge it by what their performance was as a whole. You have to dive in and look at what everything was going on last year and see there was a guy just doing the best with what he got. They kind of threw Rattler out there at times and be like, all right, just do your best. I know the team kind of is like devastated by injuries right now, but you got to do the best of what you can. And the fact that Kellen Moore, because not a lot of guys would do this. A lot of guys would be like, all right, that guy didn't have a great season. He's not even my guy, anyways. Let's push him on. I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out who I want for the future of this team. No, he's saying, I know Rattler. I evaluate him. I know he has some potential. I don't want to move on and discard what he has potential to do too quickly. I want to instead say, hey, I realize the circumstances and challenges he was in last year, and I'm willing to look past that and see what he does this year, because I think this second offseason is a huge one for a young player coming up. So I really think this just gives me nothing about the team, really. This is about Kellen Moore. This makes me feel good about Kellen Moore, that he's logical in his approach to what he's doing. He has, an open mind. He's taking every option. He wants to nail the quarterback position for this team, whether it's Derek Carr, which I doubt it is going to be, whether it's Spencer Rattler, who's going to be the guy, or whether it's going to be a rookie quarterback that they pick up in the draft. Kellen Moore is wide open, and he is using every option at his disposal, because that is the main goal here. He knows he needs to nail the quarterback position. Every team he's been at lately has had the quarterback nailed down. Dallas Cowboys, love it or hate it, Dak Prescott is a guy. He can do a lot of great stuff with the football. Kellen Moore had him there. Then you had Justin Herbert, definitely a guy. Jalen Hurts, obviously a guy as well, coming off a big-time Super Bowl win. So he's got the guy right at the last few situations he was in. That was who he was working with. He was working with the guy. Now he needs to find the guy for the Saints. And I think this open-minded approach, this ability to look past any shortcomings and say, hey, let's see what happens in this offseason. Let's see, what happens in OTAs, in mini camp, all of those kind of things. I think that's a great approach by Kellen Moore, showing he really is dedicated to making sure he's making the right decision for the Saints.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And I'm going to pull up some stats here and I'm going to double check it. I'm going to throw some numbers at you here real quick. So we're talking rookie year numbers, 52% completion percentage, quarterback rating of 77.6, QBR of 33.8, right? Not great numbers, of course, but we're not talking about Spencer Rattler. We're talking about Jalen Hurts, his rookie year with the Philadelphia Eagles, the quarterback that Kellen Moore just helped coach to a Super Bowl title. Jalen Hurts, people forget after his rookie year, we're like, they brought him in to maybe back up Carson Wentz. Doesn't look like anything special. We don't know if he'll really be a starter. Bad Philadelphia Eagles team in 2020 that was ravaged by injuries. They fired the entire coaching staff, brought in a new young offensive mind, kind of retooled the roster, and suddenly Jalen Hurts went from a player that doesn't look like he can play in the NFL to a quality Pro Bowl and now championship quarterback. Now, we're not saying Spencer Rattler is the next Jalen Hurts, but there is some commonalities there. Both were quarterbacks who had to transfer at the collegiate level. Both were very highly touted freshman guys. Both are guys who dealt with some adversity and found a way to overcome it and eventually reach success at the end of their collegiate careers, albeit with different programs and a little bit different levels. Both have phenomenal physical tools. Both are great athletes, and both had rookie seasons where they were surrounded by injured talent, lame duck coaches, and just set up to a total fail. And they just found a way to power through it, even though they had mediocre numbers. So if Spencer Rattler, led by Kellen Moore, who again coached Jalen Hurts, can follow that Hurts path, then Saints fans, you guys got a winner. You guys got it nailed down, like you said, with that guy. Now, we don't know if Spencer Rattler is going to follow Jalen Hurts. We don't know if he will, right? We don't know how it's all going to shake out. But let's not abandon ship on Spencer Rattler. And look, that's what Kellen Moore is saying. He's saying, listen, when I was a backup of the Dallas Cowboys, we had a guy named Tony Romo. Tony Romo was a nothing for 3 years, right? Before he became a starter in 2006. Jalen Hurts really struggled his rookie year, of course, like I just mentioned, right? It's not uncommon for a lot of quarterbacks, especially if they weren't the first round, top 10, top 15 guys, to need a year or two or sometimes three to really come into their own. Let's not bury Spencer Rattler. He had to deal with incredibly tough circumstances. If they had had a completely healthy squad around him and a good coaching staff, and he had put up the similar kind of numbers, yeah, you can make an argument he's just not very good. But let's evaluate him. Let's keep that open-minded approach like you mentioned there. And I think that's a really great job by Kellen Moore and New Orleans Saints. This is why you bring in a guy like Moore, because you bring in a young guy, one of the benefits, the biases that veteran coaches tend to have, it gets completely discarded. Young guy, freshman, he can go out and approach and say, all right, listen, I don't have any bias. I don't have a dog in this fight. I think Kellen Moore wants to go out and get his quarterback. I think he really wants to draft a guy, but he doesn't want to discard Spencer Rattler because there is a chance they already have their guy, and it's the young guy from the University of South Carolina by way of Oklahoma. Again, a lot of things have to shake out. It could be that Spencer Rattler isn't anything, but he still has the tools, and if Jalen Hurts is any proof, he has a real chance to eventually be the starter. Miles, before I wrap it up here, I got one final question, and I love throwing you on the spot right here. I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. I'm going to give you a name. Who will be the Saints QB2? We think Derek Carr is going to be the starter. Who will be the Saints QB2 going into 2025, the regular season? Is it Rattler? Is it a rookie? And if it's a rookie, who are the Saints picking up? Putting you on the spot here, give us your prediction.
I really do like Rattler, and I'm slightly partial to him being, newsflash, if anybody didn't know, which some people might not know, from South Carolina, so local team, South Carolina Gamecocks, partial to Rattler, so I lean towards Rattler, and not only because of that, because I like what he puts on the field, I like what he does out, but I'll give you a two-part answer. I think it's going to be Spencer Rattler. I think that's going to be the guy, but if I'm being unbiased and I want to give you another option, I would look out. I think the Saints have been kicking the tires on Quinn Ewers. I think it's a guy that they were looking at in the later rounds. Now, obviously not a guy that you pick up in the first round, but you hear about Quinn Ewers. It's a guy that's similar to a style of football that, Kellen Moore can run. He's a talented quarterback. So that's a name that I keep, hearing bouncing around. So that's one I think is very interesting here. So I lean towards Spencer Rattler. If I was to pick somebody, I think the Saints got some options or some holes they need to fill, some people they need to, depth they need to go. But if they decide to go quarterback in the draft, I look for Quinn Ewers to potentially be the guy to come in and fill that QB number 2 spot.